Welcome to our webinar sponsored by Hqts. My name is Stella So. I'm the Vice Chair of the Hong Kong Business Association Vietnam, and he will be your host today. Today's topic is the impact of EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement on your industry and how you can benefit. The webinar is organized by Hqts and co-hosted by Eurocham Vietnam. Hqts is a quality control company providing quality control inspections, factory audits, supplier evaluations, consumer product testing, production control and management, as well as quality control consulting for Greater Asia. They have more than 1,500 employees present in 20 countries. They serve customers in both consumer products and industrial products, like in the field of automotive accessories, food safety services, energy and commodities, and all different kinds of retail products as well. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our speakers today. Our first speaker is Mr. Jean-Jacques Boufflet, who is now Vice Chairman of the European Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam. Hello, Mr. Boufflet.
Hello.
Hi. Mr. Boufflet served in the European Commission for 37 years and has participated in the negotiation of the WTO agreement and acted many years as litigator for the EU in the WTO dispute settlement panels. He also participated in the lead negotiators meetings of the EVFTA. Shortly, he will give us a brief introduction to the EVFTA and its opportunities. Our second speaker is Ms. Bùi Kim Thuy, Vietnam Senior Representative of U.S. Asean Business Council since 2018. Hello, Ms. Thuy.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
yeah,
hi.
yeah.
We can hear you now, no problem.
Yeah. Thank you. Very nice to meet you. Yeah.
Yes. For 10 years, Ms. Thuy served as the Deputy Director of Foreign Trade Agency in the Ministry of Industry and Trade. She is a member of the Harvard Advisory Board Asia Pacific and presides over several Singapore-Vietnam alumni associations. She will be giving us an orientation of how to promote bilateral trade today. Our last speaker is Ms. Hazel Kwong, the Global Sales Director of Hqts. Hello, Ms. Hazel.
Hello, how are everybody?
Hazel has a background in processing technology and engineering. She's specialized in quality management system, CE mark requirements, and FD submission compilations. Hazel will give us an insight into Vietnam's supply chain and how to ensure quality products entering the EU market. We will then move on to the Q&A session. If you have any questions, please put your questions on the Q&A function here on Zoom. We will do our best to get through all of them. And if we don't have enough time, Hqts will get the answers back to you later. So now let me hand the microphone to Mr. Boufflet. Jean-Jacques, you have 15 minutes. Please share your screen.
Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be here today with you. And I have the pleasure of talking about the impact of the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. So first, a few words about Eurocham. Eurocham is a European Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam. We exist since 22 years. We have around 1,000 members. We represent 9 national business associations and 17 sector committees working mainly on advocacy and including the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement implementation. Close partner of us are MOFA, MYT, the Advisory Council for Administrative Reform, the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce, and of course the EU delegation to Vietnam. We have been qualified, and it was an honor for us, by the former Deputy Prime Minister Vuong Dinh Hue, the driving force facilitating EU and Vietnam trade and investment cooperation. So the FTA is, it's a long story. It started actually in 2012 until 2015. It was negotiated in 3 years, relatively short time for the compare with other FTAs. And Eurocham was present since the beginning, particularly in helping to formulate the wishes of the European community for enhancing free trade between Vietnam and EU. So the signature took place in December 2015, and we had entry into force, as you know, on last August 1st. So one word about the trade relation of EU and Vietnam. Vietnam is the 70th trade partner in goods for the EU and our second partner in Asean. By 2019, before COVID, the EU was the fourth largest investment partner in Vietnam. And Vietnam has invested in 18 out of 21 industry according to National Economic Classification System, and is present in 54 provinces and cities around the country. Vietnam has 63 provinces, so we are practically everywhere. The largest sector of investment for the EU is industrial processing and manufacturing. Just to give you the importance of the free trade agreement, according to a World Bank report of May 2020, the full implementation of the EVFTA could increase Vietnam GDP by 2.4%. It will, if Vietnam simultaneously implement the EVFTA and the CPTPP, its GDP could increase by 3.2%. And if Vietnam combine the effect of these two free trade agreements with the complementary domestic reform to raise productivity, its GDP could increase further by 6.8%. So this gives you the size of the challenge here. Trade relation between EU and Vietnam. So you have the chart. You have seen that it has developed very significantly lately, and it's still characterized by a big imbalance, as Vietnam is exporting far more than it imports to the EU. So now, if we could move to the FTA itself, EVFTA. So it is what we used to call a last generation free trade agreement. That is, it goes beyond the classical reduction of duty in trades in goods. It covers also services as well as a new feature like the IP law, like the government procurement, and even it has even a chapter on sustainability, as well as social and labor rights. So it's a very comprehensive free trade agreement. The core of it is, of course, the reduction of duty. So the reduction of duty will be 99%. So practically a full liberalization. Within 7 years for the Vietnamese export to Europe, and 10 years for European exports to Vietnam. 80%, 85.6% of tariff line will be eliminated upon entry into force. So already on entry into force, the duty on 85% of tariff line will be eliminated. So we have a little drawing which show you. So the main bulk is the tariff reduction, but as I say, you have also other features like policy innovation, which custom and trade facilitation, rule of origin, including geographical indication, intellectual property rights, and last but not least, the investment protection agreement. In reality, we are dealing with two agreements. One being the FTA, the free trade agreement, the other, the IPA, the investment protection agreement. However, the second agreement, because it still requires the individual ratification of each and every 27 member states, cannot enter into force immediately. It will enter into force within 2 or 3 years. But in terms of investment, it's tomorrow. So it means that you have to take this position already now. In terms of covering goods covered, or which are of main interest, at least for European export to Vietnam, you have automotive, machinery, it's our first export, machinery, agribusiness, fishery, food and beverages, pharmaceutical, electronic, and others. Okay. So now I will go in the detail of the tariff reduction and tariff elimination. Machinery and appliance, almost all EU export will be fully liberalized at entry into force. The rest after 5 years. So all equipment, machinery and appliance exported from EU to Vietnam will be liberalized upon entry into force, that is now. Automotive, it's longer. It's 7 years for car part, 10 years for cars. Wine and spirit, 7 years. Food, dairy after 5 years. Meat, 7 years. Pharmaceutical, I think, is our second biggest export to Vietnam. Around half will be duty-free, half of export will be duty-free upon entry into force, and the rest after 7 years. But beyond the tariff reduction, and the most, I would say, probably the most important is the removal of non-tariff barrier. Not completely, not totally, but most of it. Vietnam has accepted the marking of origin made in EU for non-agricultural goods, except pharmaceuticals. Of course, member states made in France, made in Germany, specific markings will continue to be practiced, so it will be up to the manufacturer to decide. In very important feature for automotive, the recognition of EU vehicle certificate of conformity after 5 years upon entry into force. So cars will be imported without being retested. So in terms of export opportunity, I think that's what interests most of the participants. Statistics developed by the Vietnamese Ministry of Industry and Trade show that it will increase the Vietnam export to EU could increase by 20% this year. Well, this is anticipation which were made before the COVID. So for 2020, I'm not so sure that it will be achieved. But what is important is that in 2030, that is within 10 years, it will be increased by 44%. So which is very significant, and it gives you the potential. Yeah? Vietnam is already among top 10 exporting country to the EU. The tariff reduction and tariff elimination for EU companies, as I told you, machinery, automotive, wine and spirit, food, pharmaceutical. For Vietnamese company, if you intend to produced in Vietnam to export to EU. You have, of course, the agro-food sector, coffee, fresh fruit and vegetable, liberalized upon entry into force. That is, they are already tax-free. Yeah? Rice will be subject to a zero duty tariff, but within a quota. Seafood, 50% upon entry into force. Textile, 42.5% of tariff will be liberalized upon entry into force. The rest will be removed within 3 to 7 years. Computers and electronic, this is the first export of Vietnam to Europe. 74% of tariff will be liberalized upon entry into force. The rest within 3 to 5 years. So what can be the expected changes after the entry into force of the EVFTA? In terms of market access, you will have for services, the business services, environmental services, postal and courier services, banking and insurance, as well as maritime transport will be partially liberalized. Yeah. In terms of removal of non-tariff member, there will be a certain number of improvement. However, most of them will take few years, so they will not be produce their effect immediately. Better protection for FDI under the IPA. Bilateral agreement on the protection of foreign direct investment will be replaced by the European-Vietnam Investment Protection Agreement. Yeah? Investment dispute will be adjudicated by a highly qualified independent tribunal members, tribunal and appeal tribunal. So it means that you will not have to undergo the national court, but you can make recourse to this international court. Yeah. Better protection of intellectual property rights. You know, it is key for protecting the rights of the traders. Extension of terms of protection for design up to 15 years. Recognition of geographical indication, as well as a specific protection in the pharmaceutical sector. In terms, as I say, this is a new generation agreement which goes beyond exchange of goods and services, but for example, public market access, and this is really a novelty. This is one of the rare developing country who has accepted to open its public market to a European company. Yeah? All public entities at ministries and central level, as well as to
Mr. Buffet, you have one more minute. You have one more minute. Sorry.
Okay, I'll try to make it quicker, and then maybe if you have questions. So you need to know that public market for the city of Hanoi and Saigon will be also accessible to a European company. So transparency of custom procedure, etc. So investment trends in key sector, I think it's important for you to know what are the most trending sector: clean energy, food and agriculture, machinery and pharmaceutical. Here you have the detail, but I don't have time to elaborate on that, but you can see the slides on the investment trade. So beyond the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, it is clear that the ultimate objective is the Asean Free Trade Agreement, which was actually negotiated in 2008, but it was suspended after 2 years. But the idea is to resume the negotiation so as to be able to put in free trade both the two biggest of the biggest market in the world, the Asian market and the European market. Yeah, this will be the next frontier, next achievement. And against this background, it is clear that Vietnam will play a key role as a hub. I don't have time to say 2 words about the impact of COVID, but I guess there will be a question on that. So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buffet, for the detailed presentation. Somebody asked if the apparel industry is benefiting from the FTA. Mr.
Yes.
Buffet? Yes.
Yes. Yes, it is the case. As I told you, even upon entry into force, a certain number of items will be liberalized, and the rest within a short time frame. However, I must be clear that the rule of origin will be key because the free trade agreement still requests a double transformation. That is not only the garment, but the textile must be of Vietnamese origin. So it limits in practice the possibility of using it because Vietnam is still in deficit in terms of producing textile and needs to import textile from third country. Normally, that could lead to losing the origin. However, there are some possibility of accumulating origin if the textile comes from a country which has a free trade agreement with both the EU and Vietnam, which is, for example, the case of Korea. Singapore also has a free trade agreement with both. And recently we got Japan, so you have already this possibility with the 3 countries. And in as much as both EU and Vietnam will continue to negotiate with other countries, and that will be the case with other countries in Asean, it will be possible to extend the accumulation of origin.
And Mr. Buffet, what do you think of the COVID situation now? Is it affecting some of the positive outcome of this agreement?
Well, the time frame is not the same. COVID had unfortunately produced a negative impact, it is clear. But I would say more on the global economy and particularly on the demand, the customer of the Vietnamese product rather than Vietnam itself, because Vietnam succeed in remaining a relatively low incident country. It has less than 1,000 cases and maybe less than 40 deaths. So relatively mild impact. And I must underline that Vietnam never stopped exporting during all the period, even at the peak of the lockdown. We just saw the provisional statistic for 2020. Despite of the COVID, Vietnam nevertheless achieved more than 2% growth, which is unprecedented because in the region, everybody got a negative growth rate. However, it is clear that the COVID has an impact on the world economy, particularly in the European economy, and that will have a negative impact, but we all hope it will be short term. In terms of middle terms, it is clear that with the entry into force and further implementation of the free trade agreement, it will be a tremendous boost for trade and investment in Vietnam.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Thuy, what do you think? Ms. Thuy? Are you there?
Here, I'm there. I'm here. Thank you.
So what do you think about the COVID situation affecting the outcome of the agreement?
The COVID situation has affected everything, not the EVFTA, not only the free trade agreement sector, but it has been affecting everyone, including you and me and all the guys joining the webinar today. But how come we can survive? How come we can make full use of the FTAs, not only the EVFTA? It depends on the very quick reaction from different governments. And it also depends on you and me. That means the perspective of each person, the opportunities, the chances, and also the challenges depending on each of everyone here. But
Yes.
It depends a lot on the quick action of each government. For example, our Vietnamese government, they have done a great job for the past recent days.
Yes, thank you, thank you. Mr. Buffet, is it the first time that an official trade partner accepts the marking of made in EU? So does it mean that we will see products in Vietnam very soon written, marked, made in EU?
Yes, it is the case. It's the first time that in an agreement, a trade partner accept to the made in EU mark of origin. As I told you, it will be alongside with the classical member states mark of origin. So in fact, the producer will have the choice to label his good either as made in France, made in Germany, or made in the EU. And it is to be expected that we will see rapidly
this trend will be in many other Asian countries, or also will happen in Europe as well? This kind of marking?
Well, I'm no more in the EU civil service, but I guess my former colleagues now that when they are negotiating free trade agreement, they put a point in insisting on this disposition. Yeah? So okay. I would tend to believe that it will be more and more the case in as much as we will have new free trade agreement.
Yes, very good, thank you. So now I give the microphone to Ms. Thuy. Ms. Thuy is going to give us an orientation of how to promote bilateral trade. Ms. Thuy, please.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Sorry if any inconvenience occurred. For the very first verse, I would like to thank you, Hqts, for inviting us to be joining this very interesting webinar. And thank you, Mr. Buffet, for a very interesting and helpful overall panorama. So what you can see, what we have been doing and what we will be doing to maximize the benefit from the Vietnam-EU FTA. Here is the how many free trade agreements joined by Vietnam or joined by ASEAN. We have so far 16 free trade agreements, including EVFTA, as you can see on the screen. We have so far ATIGA, ASEAN Trade in Goods. We have ASEAN China, ASEAN Korea, ASEAN Japan, ASEAN Australia, New Zealand, ASEAN India. We also have many bilateral FTA, which can be named Vietnam Japan, Vietnam Chile, Vietnam Korea, Vietnam EAEU, that means with the Eurasia Economic Union. We also have CPTPP, ASEAN Hong Kong China, and the most recent is Vietnam EU FTA. We also have the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, Vietnam EFTA, and Vietnam XRN. That is the ongoing negotiation, or we just finished the negotiation and not yet signed for such agreement. So far up to today, we have 13 free trade agreements already activated and implemented by Vietnam. We do think that a lot of people especially all of you participating in our webinar today are very interested in the Vietnam-EU FTA. We have two FTA, which are Vietnam-EU FTA and CPTPP, which are called the new generation FTA. That means among 16 free trade agreements joined by Vietnam or ASEAN, we have only two new generation FTA, and Vietnam EU is one among two. Why we call the new generation FTA? Because here we have the very new and advanced provisions that the others FTA, that means the rest of the FTA here is the 14 FTAs. They do not have such kind of advanced provisions like government procurement, as it has been mentioned in the presentation made by Mr. Buffet. We also have here the labor, the environment provision. In all other FTAs, we do not have the labor and environment as well as the government procurement provisions. That's the reason why we call Vietnam EU and CPTPP to be the new generation, because it has touched the very advanced provision to bring equal, the real equal trade for all. That means to bring the equality for all the traders. Next slide, thank you. Here is the, we also in the position of trade surplus in the Vietnam-EU 28 trade relations. And EU is the second largest import market in the world. While we account for only 2% of this market, that means the exporters, producers from Vietnam, no discrimination between our private sector and the foreign direct investors doing business in Vietnam, provided that you are the producer and the exporters within the territory of Vietnam. You have a lot of chances, a lot of opportunities to export to EU 28 or EU 27 to cover for the rest, that means 98% of the market. The next slide. Next slide. Here, for textile, I really want to answer in a detailed for the questions raised from the previous presentation. That is there any opportunities for or benefit for textile and government sector? We do think that textile and government sector will have a lot of opportunities for exporting from Vietnam to EU. The reason why we think like that, because even though, as being mentioned by Mr. Buffet's presentation, it's not easy for producers and exporters from Vietnam to export to EU in order to get the preferential tariff treatment from textile and apparel segment. Because here, EVFTA applied the very stringent rule, which we call the fabric forward rule. Fabric forward rule means that from fabric from the raw fabric into the finished fabric, from fabric, cut, make, and trimming into the finished apparel products. All of these steps must take place within the territory of Vietnam. If you cannot have enough textile, that means the input used for making garment, you can import the textile from outsiders, provided that the third party must simultaneously have the FTA with Vietnam and with EU. For example, in the previous presentation performed by Mr. Buffet, you mentioned very clearly we have the FTA with Singapore. We have ATIGA, and EU also have the FTA with Singapore. Vietnam have the Vietnam-Korea FTA, and we also have the ASEAN-Korea FTA. And Korea also have the FTA with EU. That allow for the third-party accumulation here. That means the producers from Vietnam can take the input from Korea for further accumulation in Vietnam and then export to EU to enjoy the special tariff reduction from this FTA. Even though it's not easy, because according to our statistics from the customs data, we have only 12% of the textile that can be imported from Korea. That means 88% could not be imported from Korea, but from outsiders. And if you import the textile from outsiders other than Singapore or Korea so far, we hope in the near future we can import from Japan. That means you have to import from Taiwan or from China or from any other parties, and this FTA does not allow for further accumulation from any other outsiders like Taiwan or China. But we still do hope that the textile apparel section can enjoy the benefit from this sector. It stimulates the investment into the territory of Vietnam for making the textile in order to make the garment. Thank you. Next slide. For leather and footwear, provided that when EVFTA is adopted, nearly 40% of the tariff lines of footwear will enjoy the tariff of 0%, and the remaining will be gradually reduced to 0% according to a schedule from 3 to 7 years, depending on each specific age at court. The textile as well as apparel section, they think they will have the opportunities to account for more ratio of the market of the EU. For the seafood, from the industry, from the seafood industry, they think they will have a lot of opportunities for seafood exporting from Vietnam into EU. Even though the rules of origin for seafood is not easy for exporters and producers to apply and to meet such stringent requirements, because it requires the originating input such as shrimp must be wholly obtained within the territory of Vietnam. For example, if you know, India is a very big market for the raw material like shrimp, but from India exporting shrimp to EU, such India shrimp could not enjoy the preferential tariff treatment. Under GSP, no tariff preferences, and India also do not have any FTA with EU. But from Vietnam, we can enjoy the 0% of shrimp. If this is shrimp originating, that means wholly obtained within the territory of Vietnam. We import a lot of shrimp, that means raw shrimp from India, but we have to use the raw shrimp from India in order to export to other markets, not to EU, because if we use the shrimp from India and then further processing in Vietnam and then export to EU, we could not enjoy the special tariff reduction. Kindly remind you, our exporters, that the shrimp from India or the shrimp from any other markets like Bangladesh or Sri Lanka could not be allowed to be used as the input for further production to export to EU. We have to use only the shrimp within the territory of Vietnam, even though we import maybe 50% of shrimp from India. Next slide. For timber and wood products, you can see that the demand for wood in the EU nearly 85 to 90 billion US dollars per year, and the export of timber and wood products from Vietnam to EU is recorded with nearly 1 billion US dollars, accounting for only 1%. So we do think that the exporters and producers from Vietnam still have a room and more capacity for the growth. The current tariff is now comparatively low, from 0 to 6%, depending on different HED court. And when the EVFTA comes into effect, or taxes all tariff dropped to 0%. The origin criteria for those products is quite flexible, allow for, that means the input can come from other territories outside of Vietnam, and then the further processing in Vietnam, provided that you meet the origin criteria of change in tariff classification, and then you export to EU to enjoy the tariff reduction of this FTA. Next slide. For fruits and vegetables, nearly 94% of such kind of products will be reduced from the tariff rate of 10 to 20% to 0%. But it's not easy for Vietnamese producers to export to EU, even though the tariff is very low to 0%, because producers and exporters have to meet a lot of barriers to trade. We call it the SPS and TBT. That means the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, a lot of technical requirements, not just only the tariff. You have to meet a lot of stringent requirements regarding to the SPS and TBT in order to access to the market of EU. Next slide. Here is some challenges faced by producers and exporters when exporting to EU. The first, as being mentioned by me previously, is the fabric forward rules of origin. From cotton to yarn, and from yarn to raw fabric, you can make it anywhere in the world. EVFTA does not care the origin of cotton or the origin of yarn, but CPTPP, they care about the origin of yarn, from yarn forward rule in the CPTPP. But here, from raw fabric to finished fabric, and from finished fabric, you have to undergo the CMT, I mean cutting, making, and trimming into the finished garment. All of these process or these steps must take place, must occur within the territory of Vietnam. And all of you know, from raw fabric into the finished fabric, we cannot meet, that means the supply cannot meet the demand of the real market of Vietnam. In fact, we have to import a lot of fabric from outsiders other than Vietnam and EU. But we also know that from Vietnam, not many, but we have several producers. They import the high quality fabric from EU, can be from Italy. And then they make the finished garment in Vietnam, exporting to EU to enjoy the tariff reduction from this FTA. But not so many garment producers can make like that, because it is a very high quality fabric from EU. Next slide.
Ms. Thuy, you have 1 more minute. Sorry.
Okay. So next slide. Next slide. We do think that in order to compare the stringent rules of the rules of origin among 16 FTAs joined by Vietnam, we do think that EVFTA may be the most stringent rule with a lot of complicated provisions. So for producers and exporters, in the first phase, the first period of implementing this FTA, it's not easy for you, but we are here to support you. Not only the Eurocham, the Hqts, or we also have BCCI and many other associations to be here in Vietnam to support you. We can provide the technical assistance for producers and exporters in order to understand more about the very technical issues of this FTA. If you cannot understand the stringent rule, you cannot meet the very stringent requirement, and you cannot enjoy the tariff reduction from this FTA. I'm so sorry because the time has already lapsed, but I'm here and to be ready for answering and dovetailing the questions from you guys.
Very interesting. Thank you, Ms.
Yeah,
Thuy.
I'm so sorry.
No,
Yeah.
no problem.
Thank you.
How does the EVFTA address the various barriers to trade, BTT, now existing on both sides?
we do not choose easy things to do from both sides, Vietnam and EU. We do not choose the easy things to do. You see, we have undergoing 10 years since 2010 so far to 2020. We have it has taken 10 years from the very preliminary research on how come we can carry out a negotiation between ASEAN and EU. But you can see that ASEAN and EU have not reached a consensus on the way, that means the approach, the way each side can approach to each other, and we failed. And in the last minute, we choose that separately, each member of ASEAN member state can choose to make another approach to EU. And luckily, Vietnam and Singapore can have our own approach to reach a consensus with EU. And so far, we have both FTA, bilateral FTA between EU and Vietnam, between Singapore and Vietnam. And it's never easy. It's never easy with a lot of strings and rules. But we do think that the more difficulties, more obstacles faced by you, when we touch the success, you will feel very glorious. You will be so proud of what you have been doing.
So, Ms. Thuy, do you think a third-party quality assurance company can help to overcome the challenges?
Like Hqts, you can provide technical assistance for a lot of our companies here that are doing business in Vietnam. We do know that the reason why I accept your invitation, because as far as I observed from the opinions nationwide, they highly appreciate what you have been doing for the companies doing business, doing operation in Vietnam, Hqts. So that's the reason why I accept your invitation.
Ms. Hazel, what do you think?
Yes. I think because of the EVFTA, that means the increase of the trade, the export of Vietnam to EU, and that means also the increased use by Vietnam of the international standard. And Hqts, we are formulating the training program to work together with the industry manufacturer to have a good practice in the manufacturing of the good to adopt the international standard. Because right now with the EVFTA, the tariff barrier, the import-export regulation barrier has been lowered down, but the product quality barrier is still there. So we are working hard, and together with the industry, we hope the adoptions of the international standard will be increased as well.
So could you give us insight into the Vietnam supply chain?
Yeah, sure. I would like to share my slide, and let me start right now. So thank you, Stella, and introduce myself again. I'm Hazel, currently the sales director of Hqts, and we are a third-party quality solution company in Asia. I came to Vietnam like Ho Chi Minh in 2018 to set up the very first sales and operation office of Hqts in Southeast Asia. We decided to make Vietnam as our first step in this region because of the rapid growth of our business, the shifting of trade, and the dramatic at least 8% export growth of Vietnam. Today, I'm very honored to share my on-the-ground experience with you, and I hope this experience could help you to understand this market more and to create another chapter in your supply chain. I would like to share the slides about some photos of me in Vietnam. And my first impression in Vietnam is energetic. The street is so vibrant, and I actually used 1 month to learn how to cross the road. And I really love this place because of the food, the coffee shops at every corner, the people, and the hospitality. In my life setting out here, on the ground here, I get a lot of support from the expat Facebook group, from accommodations to some legal questions or to some updated COVID update. I get all the help from this expat community. And furthermore, the Chamber of Commerce activities here are so active that I get to know some of the friends, some of the business partners that's helping me professionally and personally. And once our team set up here, we really grow fast following the footsteps of Vietnam. And we're able to achieve a double-digit growth annually in our business. I would say like this is an environment that we welcome all the foreign investors with open hand and it's easier than you thought. Next slide, please. So for the shifting of the supply chain, no matter for the purpose of risk allocations to have another sourcing strategy, or the driver like the EVFTA, this free trade agreement to encourage the trade between the two regions, in recent years, we observe a substantial increase of inquiries about like checking the equipment in EU. We can also see the increasing purchase of mechatronic parts from EU. And at the same time, we also heard about the need to train up the local staff in the factory here in Vietnam, no matter to set up the social compliance policy, to have the lean production line, or to put things in paper and records and to track the product flow. I would say that this is a sign of the scalable factories here in Vietnam. Therefore, we are really excited to see how this EVFTA in the future 5 to 7 years to create the opportunities in these regions. Next slide, please. So like how to capture the supply chain opportunities? I would say like from what we observe, to capitalize on the opportunities of the shifting supply chain, Vietnam is to develop its infrastructure. According to the World Economic Forum's Global Competitiveness Report in 2019, Vietnam ranks 67th out of 141 in terms of the overall quality of infrastructure, 103rd in quality of roads, and 83rd in quality of port infrastructure. And actually, you can also observe this from the foreign direct investment of Europe, which is leading by the Netherlands, France, and UK, that their investment is all in the infrastructure, like a good quality infrastructure area. Say, for example, Hanoi, Quang Ninh, Ho Chi Minh, Vung Tau, or Dong Nai. So like I would say like to really like continue to become competitive in attracting the FDI, we can see like further developing the road network, port infrastructure, industrial park, and utility supply would be critical for Vietnam. Next slide. From the other side, what we always heard about from buyers, from the Europe buyers, especially our client populations, are the difficulty of sourcing. Everybody is paying attention to this market, but still not many of them taking the actual steps. There are obstacles. If you have previous experience sourcing in Vietnam, you may agree with me. First, we also get used to source from a platform. No matter the global source, Alibaba, or any of these platforms, you can send numerous RFQ at your tip of fingers, and then you get at least half of them to reply you within a week. However, this is not how it goes here. There are no unified and comprehensive platform yet in Vietnam, and you may not expect the same speed of replies. Besides, my client always also feedback to us like they're not able to enter the sourcing ecosystem here. They need to find the local trading companies, and it's not easy for them to work with the factory directly. If they are not able to work with the factory directly, it's not easy for them to customize and private label their product. And from my own experience in facilitating all these communications, out of my surprise, I came across with two kinds of responses. The first one, the MOQ, like the minimum order quantity is too small and they are looking for about 10,000 pieces. Or the second one, which is totally different, saying like 5,000 pieces are too much and these factories are looking for like less than 1,000 pieces. And they're not looking to expand in the future. So look, like to place order with 500 pieces at first batch and then grow to 2,000 pieces seems to be experienced dealing with your previous factories, but like this may not always happen here. We also come across with some factories that work with only the domestic companies and they are not ready yet to do any export orders. So at the outcome, we also saw not like just now the two panels as already shared, like they're not able to fully enjoy the benefit of FTA, especially for some industry because the upstream supply chain are still relying on the other countries. So in the outcome, majority of our clients, like they are following the footsteps of their previous factories And then like if the previous factory like invest in Vietnam, then they're able to source it from Vietnam. So for all this matter, I believe like if we really like work together to grow with the Chamber of Commerce, with the industry, with the manufacturer, with the governments to grow this ecosystem together, then we can solve all these issues in the sourcing in Vietnam right now. Next. So as a third-party quality service company, Hqts, we hope to fill the gap. We are not putting this as any business strategy, but we just want to put it as the facilitation process. So because like with numerous inquiries of helping the clients to look for some good quality factory, we really hope like we're able to play some role in the matching process and to facilitate this sourcing process. So like we welcome all the factories to register your profile with us. And in our corporate newsletters like that we send out to our client every month, we hope to provide this as a piece of information. And if our buyers are interested in your product and you are qualified to match with their requirements, we hope like to set a meeting for you and to facilitate this process for two parties. Next slide, please. So like in a trade, we always try to create a win-win situations. The buyer looks for the good factories, the factories looks for the good buyers. So from our experience as the third party, we would like to share like two important aspects of quality buyers are looking in their sourcing process. In EU, product compliance is legally required in directive. And all the consumer products sold in EU are deemed to be certified under the relevant directive with a CE mark affixed. Some of the requirements are mandatory, like the EN71 for toys, and it's not just the CE stickers. You expect like the toy shall be tested compliance. And if you are from the textile industry, garment industry, you may need to make sure yourself is compliant with the social responsibility requirements and social audit. So in addition to these regulatory requirements, remember in an international trade, any defective product will consume a lot of money to rectify at the point of destination. So I just please make sure like on quality and on time are the two elements factory or exporter could always work in advance. Next.
Hazel, you have 1 more minute.
Okay, sure, thanks. So at the end of my sharing, I only have 1 minute. I would like to give an example of the expectation gap of the factories and buyers. We have learned this lesson in our services in China, and we would like to share this experience with you in Vietnam. It's about the RoHS compliance for electronic and electrical products. With the investment from the big brand, I believe you know who is the big brand in the consumer electronics in Vietnam. And in addition to what we have observed in our quality inspection business, we believe the ecosystem of electronics product of this field will be developed very soon in Vietnam. So RoHS compliance is not just a piece of testing report. The local regulatory in EU may send an inspector to the retail shop or at the point of the custom to select product randomly to screen for the RoHS compliance. I would like to show how fast the screening process could be to identify a not conform product in this video. Okay, please play the video. So as you can see, we didn't edit this video at all. It only takes like less than 20 seconds to screen for the RoHS compliance. And at the end, I would like to say like, just don't tender your luck with the mass production, especially you are doing the business with your European clients. And please only ensure like high quality product enter the EU market. And at the same time, we also like hope more quality buyers to source from this region and make use the advantage of this free trade agreement. Okay, thank you. That is my sharing.
Thank you, Hazel, for sharing your experience. I have a question for Mr. Boufflet. Some of the audience would like to know, how will the market UK v Vietnam affected following the Brexit? Mr. Boufflet.
Thank you. Well, until the end of the transition period, that is until the end of the year, UK will be treated as a still member of the European market, and as such it will benefit from the free trade agreement statute. So UK goods will benefit from the treatment reserved to European goods, and Vietnamese goods will accede to the British market under the same condition as to the rest of the EU. After the end of the transition period, UK will have to, the relations will have to be ruled by a free trade agreement between UK and Vietnam if it is signed on and implemented on time. I know that they are negotiating, they have some discussion, but we don't know when it will be completed. Of course, we don't know what are the conditions. It is likely to be expected that the conditions will be more or less the same. Probably UK will have to give more concession to Vietnam. I trust the Vietnamese negotiator to get maybe a little bit more out of UK, because UK is a smaller market. And of course, the price tag will be higher. There could be a problem of a rule of origin if goods is exported, European goods which are exported to Vietnam, incorporate a certain number of input from UK. If there is a free trade agreement between both between UK and both EU and Vietnam, it will be the same thing as for Singapore, for example. Accumulation of origin would be possible. However, again, it's a matter of time. Yeah? For the time being, nobody knows if there will be a free trade agreement with both. Yeah? If not, that will be an issue, because the presence of goods of other origin than European origin could lose the statute of European good.
And when do you think is the feasible timeline for the conclusion of EU-ASEAN FTA?
Well, we have to first to resume the negotiation. It has been posed in 2009, I think, if my recollection is good. So it will take a bit of time because the reason why we suspended this negotiation was the lack of consensus from several partners, and that's why the EU decided to switch on the bilateral free trade agreement to create building blocks and the critical mass which will enable to enlarge it to the rest of the ASEAN countries. You have to keep in mind that some of these ASEAN countries are reluctant, for example, to liberalize their service, to liberalize their public procurement, etc. So it was, I personally took part in the negotiation of the free trade agreement, ASEAN free trade agreement a few years ago. And after 2 years of, we were still diverging whether we would have negotiating groups or discussion groups on certain issues. So it will require really a change of position for some of the developing member of ASEAN, particularly because they already enjoy some form of privilege, access to the EU with the Everything But Arms initiative given by the EU unilaterally. The LDCs country, and you have 3 of them in ASEAN, can export their goods to EU, practically all goods except some agricultural goods in exemption of duty. So they have no benefit in having a free trade agreement, and at the same time, they don't have to give a counterpart. Yeah.
Sure.
In a free trade agreement, they would have to give a counterpart.
Yeah.
So they are not so enthusiastic about it.
We have many questions, but unfortunately, we're running a little bit out of time. So I have one last question for Ms. Thuy. How do you think Vietnam can do better in the enforcement of the intellectual property rights? Ms. Thuy?
Thank you for your questions. Maybe from you or maybe from participants. We can do better, provided that the implementers, here is the producers, the exporters, and the enterprises, can have more opportunities to reach to the transparency of the legal system, including all the legal documents related to the EVFTA, provided that the business community can receive more technical assistance from such kind of projects or organizations. Because EVFTA is not easy if we do not say it is the most stringent FTA when compared with other FTA. That's the reason why Mr. Buffet said that ASEAN will lack of the consensus when reaching a comprehensive FTA with EU. It's not easy for us, but provided that the private sector, the business community have chances or opportunities to reach, that means they have the opportunities to reach to the transparency of the legal system. And they have more opportunities to receive technical assistance, to understand more, to be equipped with more understanding about this FTA so that they can implement this better.
Thank you, Ms. Thuy, for your opinion.
Transparency of the legal system, including
Yes.
and that means the legal documents of the EVFTA.
Of course, yes. Unfortunately, we will have to wrap up today. Here we thank all our speakers for giving us such insightful presentations today. Many thanks to Hqts for organizing this. Thank you, EuroCham Vietnam, for co-hosting. And we thank all of you for your participation. Please leave your email and company name at the Q&A section if you want to receive the recorded video. And all the unanswered questions, the Hqts will answer you later. Please visit the website of hqts.com. They specialize in quality control inspections, factory audits, and have offices in more than 20 countries that can assist you. If you have more questions, you can send them in later. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you again. Thank you.